the slides. So first of all, welcome all of you. My name is Kiran Kumar. Thank you very much for joining this webinar session. Most of you already know me. Most of you know Dr. Swarna also, who will be delivering this lecture. Let me start out with the course. See, this session will go on till 7:30 or 7:35. It's meant for 90 minutes session. So please, make yourself available till that time. Some guidelines, try to keep your questions towards the end. Let them be general. And during the session, if you have a point to make, use the chat feature. And please, one more request is in the chat, do not message anything relating to non-subject related things right now while the course is going on. You can use the hand sticker if you want to talk. I can unmute you. And if the session cuts or stops abruptly, you can rejoin within 1 minute. Okay. Internet connectivity problem at your side or my side, you can rejoin within a minute. And the slides and the R script will be shared to your email ID after the presentation. Okay. For those who attended this program, we will share the slides. All right. So with this, let me also give you a very brief introduction about this organization, FRED. FRED stands for Foundation for Research, Education and Development. It's not a college, okay? It's a collaborative institute. We collaborate with different colleges and corporates to conduct such value-added programs. We get into colleges through the MOUs and single program contracts, and we bring together resources from academia, industry, and we also have connections with international organizations and universities. So we conduct programs in Singapore, Malaysia, European countries. We also have summer school programs. Plus, we also specialize in the areas like family business, business analytics, SME finance management. This is where our current resources are available, and we are developing. We'll bring together, like for example, we have invited Dr. Swarna Lakshmi to be part of this analytics programs that we will be designing. So she's an invited resource person for us. So again, introducing myself, I am a PGDBA MCOM graduate. I've done my CIB NET, and I have close to 15 years of experience, of which around 8 years I've been into teaching and research. And my areas of specialization include finance and analytics. And very specifically, I mentioned the last line, what are the technical tools that I am interested in and I continue to keep learning, which is Excel, R, Python, SPSS. But I learn more from the application point of view. Okay. Then of course we have Dr. Swarna Lakshmi Umameshwaran. She's a, by qualification, she's an economics and quantitative techniques qualified from MSc, and she has her PhD in economics too. She comes with a lot of experience in analytics field. I also let her introduce herself, but I just, these are the two resource persons. We will be shifting our shifts and will be presenting this session. And what do we plan to cover in this session? I also mentioned in the email, the objective is not to teach statistics. Okay. I'm assuming that all of us know these statistics and, mostly where it is applied and what time, when do you need to do a non-sample t-test, when do you need to do a correlation. I'm sure we all are aware of it. This is more of conveying how our programming language will be beneficial and useful, and how you can do it in a very simple manner. Anyone can do these programmings in our language. Okay, that is the objective with which we'll be doing. For example, we will be discussing how to do, let's say, a one sample t-test in R, and you will actually see how easy it's going to be. All right. So that is what we want to cover. I think we will be able to cover each of the points that has been mentioned here in the slide. Okay. Now I would invite Swarna ma'am to speak a little bit about why R and data analysis, and then I'll again come back. Swarna ma'am, over to you. If you want to share the screen, tell me. You want to share your screen?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. We are very happy that you've taken the time to be here today. So I am, Kiran has already introduced me, of course. So I basically come from an analytics background. I was working for companies like American Express onto my academic career. And I've worked, like he said, I've worked with tools across the board like R, Python, SAS, SPSS, etc. So now let's just come to the matter in hand, why are we all here? Why is R important or interesting to learn? I mean, we have been using Excel. I'm sure many of you have already used Excel in some way or the other to do data analysis. So why should I learn R further? What is the need? First and foremost, it's an open source tool, which means it's available, it's free. For example, if you know Excel is no longer free and you will have to pay quite a decent amount of money to get an Excel license. The other thing is R allows you to scale your analysis a lot more, both in terms of how much data you can possibly analyze, as well as the kind of analysis you do. For example, if you take Excel, yes, you can do probably up till basic regression, but you want to do something more like, say, logistic regression, or you want to do, you know, structural equation modeling or factor analysis. So there are a lot of fairly common statistics techniques out there which Excel does not use, and R allows you to do all those things, and all those things are available to you at free of cost. Second, I think it's got a large community of users, which is an advantage for any open source language. I hope all of you are familiar with the term open source language. So open source means where anybody can contribute towards developing the language. So if you take Excel, Excel is produced by Microsoft, and Microsoft has all the rights. But if you take R, anybody can contribute. If I know enough R to start building more packages in R, then I can do that, right? So which means there are thousands of people who are contributing on a daily basis, a lot of software engineers who just as a hobby keep contributing to the R base packages. They keep building new packages, they keep building new visualization libraries which are prettier and fancier, which also makes R very cutting edge. Name a new thing and R has it, or if it doesn't have it within a year, it will have it, unless something like Microsoft Excel, where it takes 2 years or 3 years before they come up with a new version. And next, R is an independent data analysis platform, in the sense it's exclusively used for data analysis and statistical analysis. Hence, there are a lot of resources available on the internet from which you can learn. It could be YouTube videos, or it could be doubts, or it could be instructions about how to do something. There are people who are writing blogs every day. They are answering questions in Quora, and so on. So that's a big advantage. And of course, not to mention, it helps to, it contributes to your resume quite a bit in any data analysis intensive organization, which I would go on to say most organizations today, even small startups to marketing and sales companies, to HR organizations, places where you thought data is not important, all of them are adopting data today, data analysis and database decision making in a big way. So I think knowing R gives you an advantage. And of course, it has a great visualization library. I hope you all know what is visualization. When I say visualization, I'm talking about graphs, beautiful plots. I mean, absolutely no comparison to what Excel has to offer. Once you start doing those visualizations, you will be like addicted to it. You cannot go back to Excel again. And of course, it's also the first step towards learning higher order data science skills. When you learn R, you learn a little bit of programming, and programming is always essential for anything that you may learn later, like say Python or anything else. Even SAS requires programming. Okay, most statistical packages, higher order statistical packages, expects you to have a little bit of programming skills, and R is, I think, a first step towards it. And finally, I think, like I said, almost across all industries, R is getting adopted today. And on that note, I'll move on to the next slide. Kiran, can you move to the next slide? Yeah. So this is just a quick, statistic about R adoption across industries. As we can see here at the top of it, it's academic, because R was initially invented by academics way back in 1993. The two professors actually developed R. So it has always had that home field advantage, and academics always are, very loyal to R. Apart from that, we also see that there's a lot of R adoption across healthcare, government, consulting, infrastructure, manufacturing. I think most Most of the adoption, as you can see here, is in academic healthcare, government and consulting. That kind of captures, I would say, 60 to 70% of the overall adoption of R. Moving on, Kiran. Yeah. What are the kind of functional areas where R is being used right now? Again, as we see here, it's interesting. Finance, accounting and finance are, very high users of R, followed by human resources and, almost all the other fields, including research and development. So that was just a quick intro to why R and how R helps you to boost your resume and your career aspirations. Yes, I think from now, Kiran will be taking it on. Yeah, thanks, Kiran. Kiran, I think you're muted.
Can you please?
Yes, you are.
Am I audible?
Yes, audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I have some technical issue here. So thank you, ma'am. Moving forward, let us learn R, okay? So what I'll do is few of the codes or few of the things that we do on R, I will be showing in the PowerPoint presentation. Few of them I will be doing it in the R Studio, okay? So this, what you're seeing on the screen, are you able to see the screen? You're able to see the R Studio screen. Can you please confirm?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is called R Studio. Okay, by the way, R Studio is the platform on which you can run R code, which is more user friendly than the original R. Okay, but both of them perform the same process. All right. Now this part, what you see here, okay, what I'm trying to highlight in my cursor, this is called source code, okay, a script basically, where you write the script. For example, you say do this, okay, R will do that, and you will be able to see the output here. Okay, for example, I will say, okay, I will use a function called getWD. Okay, what it means is I want to know which folder is mapped. In my system, there are so many folders, right? So any one of the folder must have been mapped at any point of time. Right now, I want to know which folder is mapped. Okay, so I will use this function called getWD, which means get working directory, open bracket, close bracket. Like most of us are familiar with Excel. In Excel, you have a way in which you write a function, right? That's all. In R also, you have a way in which you need to write a function. So for different functions, for different usages and purposes, you have different functions like this. GetWD is a function. The way I have written is a syntax. All you need to know is remember that. That's all. Otherwise, it's not really complicated. So I write this and I will say run. Okay. If you see it is run the code. Okay, 1 second. I will run it again. GetWD run. So I see it is giving me the answer. In the blue is the code that I gave, and in the black ink, it is giving me C drive users desktop R webinar. This is the folder which is there on my desktop. This folder and all my files, Excel file, whatever I want to load into the R is available in this folder. Now I have mapped that here. Currently it is there. Let us say I want to change it. Let us say I want to have another folder which is there on the desktop. Let's say, for example, I want to map desktop itself. Okay, so this is my desktop folder. Let us say I want to map it. What I will do is I will copy this address. Okay, if you are noticing, and I will use a function called setWD. Okay, and in inverted comma, I will paste that address. Okay, 1 second, I will write it properly. Copy address as text. Okay, it's taking that way. I guess I'll take this Excel workshop. Okay, copy address as text. Okay, so the address has been pasted. There's only one small change you'll have to do. In most of our computers, Windows, the slash is a backward slash. You need to change that to forward slash. This is one small hiccup that is still not fixed. Okay, so we do that. So now if you see, I'm saying set working directory, C drive users desktop Excel workshop. That is the folder and I'm running it. So you can see here it has run. Now if I do getWD, getWD is my function to know which folder and run it. Okay, see the new folder has been mapped again. Okay, I'll do it one more time now because now I actually want our webinar. So what I'll do is I'll say setwd open bracket. I'll take the R webinar folder. Okay, that is my folder name on the website. Sorry, on my computer. So I'll copy this address. Okay, in my setwd within inverted commas, I will give the address, change all the backward slash into forward slash. Okay, yeah, and run this program. So now if I say get wd and run the program or control enter, so now the folder R webinar is already mapped. Okay, so I think this is something which you do whatever, if you're doing any exercise on finance, statistics, marketing, data analytics, marketing, digital marketing analytics, anything that you're doing, firstly you have to map your folder, and that is what I've shown you just now. Okay, once I've mapped the folder, my next step is to read a file. I need to get a data. Okay, for example, I have this data saved in this my Excel, in this my folder. There are so many Excel data, there is some text data also. I have a data set called emp data, which is basically an employee data, which is the case study I'm going to be using. Okay, just give it a second. So what I'm trying to do now is to load this data into R. R does not have it. The folder is mapped, but the files have to be still mapped. So this is the file that I have now. If you see, it has a lot of data. It has a lot of columns. It has age, sex, working hours, occupation. I will talk about this later. Okay. Now I'll go to R. Now here I want to store the data as data. Okay. This is the name I want to give. I want to give the name as data and map it to this. So how do I do it? I'm using this symbol, if you see, lesser than symbol and an hyphen. So this basically means assignment. It is an assignment operator. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a new file in R, okay, in this script, okay, and I'm naming it as data, okay, and I'm using this function called read.csv. See, read.csv is a function in Excel. This we need to remember. So this function, what it does, it will read a CSV file. Most of you might know CSV file is the simplest version of Excel. The data gets stored without any formatting, without any complex add-ons. It's a pure data, so the memory is stored less. Most of the softwares, let's say Oracle software or SAP software, whenever they generate the data can be downloaded in CSV. Okay, so now I'm reading that file. Now where is this file? This file is in this folder, correct? Okay, I'm copying and pasting. And to that, I'm adding the file name emp.data.csv. This is something manually I'm doing. So in this folder, there is a file called emp.data.csv. Read that. Okay. Okay. Now it has been done. Now let us say I want to know the data. Okay. Let's say if I just type data. Okay. What is data? Data is something which I've already given the name as, right? So if I run it, so as you can see here in the console, I have the whole data saved. Okay, that whole data is displayed. Of course, it is not properly viewable, so I will view it. There is something called view, a function called view. If you use a view function, so I'm saying view data and run. Okay, so it shows me the table here. If you see here, the table got created and it is showing me the data. So I'm able to see the data. Okay, this is another. Let us say I don't want to see the full data. I just want to know a few top rows. I just want to see them. Okay, in that case, I will use a function called head. Okay, that will show only the head of the table. So I'm using head data and run it. So you see, it is only showing me the top 6 rows. See, top 6 rows with the column name. I can also see the bottom, okay, tile data. Okay, if I do this and run, it is showing me the bottom 6. So it's not that I'm expecting you to remember all these codes. Okay, these codes can always be checked for in the internet, or I'm going to share this with you. But just understand the mechanism, how it works. Okay, how our code works. It's very easy. You just have to remember how to load the data, how to view the data in our codes. Okay, there is also one more that you can see. For example, str. Okay, str of data. Okay, str stands for structure. So if you do a structure of a data, this is how it will appear. It is giving me each variable. What kind of variable is this? Okay. For example, ID num is an integer, and this is how it looks. It looks like 1, 2. These are the levels that you can see. Okay. Somewhere here, pre-tax docked income, it is a numerical number. It says 30.5, 55.7, 40. It is giving all the levels. Okay. The data. So it's kind of giving you an idea. There are 400 observations with 29 variables. That means there are 29 columns, 400 observations. Okay. Hope you this was clear to you. So let me go back to the slide. So we just understood getWD, setWD, read.csv. I also showed you something called str. So this is how the data will appear. So this basic coding, basic preliminary exercises have to be done by all of us. Then let me introduce my case study that we will be using. Both myself and Swarna ma'am, we both will be using this case study, a small case study, to show different statistical parameters. This is a simple employee satisfaction survey. Some 28 questions have been developed and have been administered for the 400 employees of a company. Okay, so we want to understand various aspects about this data through some statistical analysis. That is what we are going to be doing. Out of those 28 questions, these are few questions which we will be using. Okay, for example, what is your age last birthday? Okay, that was the first question. So we have the data relating to age. Let me show that here. Okay, see this part, age. So I have for 400 employees, I have the age data. Okay, then what is your gender? Male and female. For male, it is 0. Sorry, 0 on male and female. But when we have coded here, we have coded as male for 1, female for 2. This is another data that I will be using. Then since you were 16 years old, how many years have you worked for full-time pay? Okay, so that means what is your total work experience after 16 years of your age? So work experience is stored here. So I have a continuous data set here. Okay, and then I will be using the before tax income, personal income and family income. That is pre-tax income of family and pre-tax income of individual. That data also I'm using. Okay, and more, I'm also asking, are you currently member of a labor union? Yes or no? Okay, that is this data. Whatever I'm highlighting here is the column on which I will be doing some statistical test. That's why I'm taking time to explain it. All right. Then on the whole, how satisfied are you with your job? This is very important. It's a job satisfaction survey. So for each of the employees, we have given a rating scale of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 being very satisfied, 4 being, it's actually very dissatisfied, moderately dissatisfied, a little satisfied, and very satisfied, 1 to 4. Okay, I'm sorry for the spelling mistake there. I should have corrected that. Okay, job satisfaction is another number in a scale of 1 to 4. And I'm also asking another question, which one of the following job characteristics is most important to you? High income, no danger of being fired, flexible hours, opportunities for advancement, and enjoying the work. So there are 5 possible. I'm sorry, am I still audible? Someone please confirm. I have doubt on my mic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry.
It is very much audible.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Yes,
so
yes.
Job characteristics is another income. So now you understand that I have these variables which are collected, coded in the Excel sheet, which is also loaded in the R now. Okay. So now using which I will go on doing my study. Okay. The first thing that I want to know, which I've already done, is to understand the data set, which is STR. I'm using STR, structure of the data. So it gives me this output. It tells me that there are 400 observations with 29 columns. Okay. That means the respondents are 400. Number of columns or number of variables I have collected data for are 29 variables. These are the column headings. Okay. And what kind of data is there? For example, this is already coded, refined to save time. But like, let's say, for example, sex data, it might have been male, female, female, male, 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 female. It could have been a text data. It could have been a string data. Okay. In some cases, are you a member of the union? It is yes or no. Okay, so maybe true, false, true, false. It could have been a Boolean data. There are 4 kinds of data that you can find in a R. One can be a numeric, the other one string, Boolean value, okay, or an integer. You can find any of these 4 types of data. So I'm kind of getting an idea of what is my data set by using the str function. All right. Okay. I just generally want to understand the mean, median, how does it look? Okay, especially for one column called age. Okay, let me go back to R code before I do this here. We have already stored the data, right? Now I want you to observe it very carefully here, the code that I'm writing. Okay. So I want to know the summary. I'm using the function summary here. I want to know the summary. The summary includes minimum, maximum, median, mean, third quartile, first quartile. Okay. So the summary is an inbuilt function. Summary of what do I want to know? If I type summary of data, I'm just typing summary of data. Okay. Data is the file name I have given. It can be anything. Okay. So I'm giving summary of data file. See, it is giving me the whole list here. If you see, please understand this. For age, it is giving me minimum, first quartile, median, mean, third quartile, maximum. For sex, it is giving me this. For working hours, it is giving me this. For occupation, I'm getting all the data, correct? Now, what if I want to just get the data of summary of only the age column? Okay. In that case, I will type summary data. Okay. I won't close the bracket. I will use a dollar symbol. When I put a dollar symbol, it is automatically showing me all the. Please mute yourself. I will mute you all. Okay. Okay. So when I type dollar symbol, I will automatically get all the column headings. Now here I want to know the age. So that is the meaning of data dollar age. Data is the file name. Age is the column name. Now I run it. I only get, if you see, I only get for that age column, what is the minimum, median, mean. Got it? Let's say I quickly do it for one more. Let's say summary data. I want to know the income. Okay. For the income, I want to know, let's say pre-tax income. So data dollar pre-tax income. If I run this, I will get information, summary data relating to only pre-tax income. Okay. So that is the purpose of summary. Okay. I'm going a little slower right now, but I will increase the speed. But I want you to get the logic of how, when a code is given, what does it mean? How do you enter it in R? How it works? Then let us say we want to generate an understanding of the gender, the distribution of gender in my sample out of 400. How does it look? Males and females, but I want to see it in the graphical way. So for that, we use this particular function called bar plot. So I say bar plot, in the bracket I'm writing table, open bracket, data dollar sex. Okay. So data, as you know, is the file name. Sex is the column name, correct? So for this column, take this column, convert that into a table. We are telling R to convert that into a table. Okay. So now it will have a table with, like, I can show you that. Okay. Let's do it. Okay. Let me first show you table of data dollar. So see, it creates a table with how many one, how many two. One, you know, is male, two is females. So 233 males. So this table, when I code this, when I copy paste this code there, it will take the table and create a bar plot like this, bar chart like this. Plus I'm also giving names argument, names.argument equals male and female. I'm using a C combine function. And I'm saying for the first one, you give male, for the second one, you give female. Then main stands for the title of the chart. Okay, whatever you write inside this inverted comma, that comes as a title. Then X lab is the label for X axis gender. Y lab stands for Y label, Y axis label. And I'm saying these are the names I have given. So this is how you can create a graph. I'm showing you very simple graphs here. But as Swarna ma'am was just mentioning, you can, there's no limit for the kind of creative graphs that you can come out with once you start working on it. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is, let us say I want to understand the distribution of work experience. Okay. Generally, what is a work experience? So I am creating a histogram for that. Okay. Again, I repeat, I am not trying to tell you how complicated or how to remember all these codes. I want you to observe the uniformity. Okay. See, how you give a code for bar plot is almost same to how you give it for histogram and also for scatter plot. You just have to remember this function, bar plot for creating a bar plot, HIST for histogram. Okay. Next, I'm going to be talking about scatter plot. So plot, PLOT. Okay. For your data, when you want to do it, you can simply copy paste this. This code can be copy pasted in your R script, and you can just change the file name. It will still be working. Okay. Anyways, so histogram, data is my file name, put a $, and I'm taking work years. Work years means number of work years. That column name is work years. And of course, I'm giving main. Main stands for the title of the chart. X label for the X axis, Y lab for, so X lab, Y lab, main. Okay, these are all these are all inbuilt arguments. Okay, all right. So I'm also trying to create a scatter plot. As you know, scatter plot basically talks about how, take two continuous series of income, and you want to, variables, and you want to establish a relationship between both of them. This is a graphical way of looking at correlation. Okay, so I want to kind of see, is there a correlation between the age and the income level? Okay, so how do we give it? So plots by default gives you a scatter plot. Data $age, that means file name data $age. Age is the column name, that is one variable. Again, data pre-tax inc. Pre-tax inc is the column name or the variable name. So compare these two and give a scatter plot. Okay, so that again, main title of the chart, X lab, Y lab is being given. So the graph looks like this. What I will do is I'll take 30 seconds, go and show you how to create this in R. Okay, let's do it. Let us say plot. Okay, we will create a plot between let us say age, okay, and dollar family income. Income. Okay, that's it. I'll run it. I will change it later. Okay, so if you see here, the graph is created. Okay, plot data $age. So it is created, but of course it does not have a proper chart title. It does not have X label, Y label. So now I will give arguments. Okay, so main should be age and income correlation. Whatever I type, it will come. Okay, then X lab should be age. Okay, and Y lab should be income. Okay, so that's it. I run it. Now if you see, the title has come. So like this, there are like another 5 to 6 different arguments that you can give in the plot function, which will make you make this graph. In fact, you can change the color of the, I'll just do it for you, just so that you have an idea of how things work. So there is this argument called color. Okay, if you say blue, COL. Yeah, it has changed the color of all the dots into blue here. Okay, so I can simply zoom this to have a better view. So I have it, and I just have to copy this and paste wherever I want to. All right. There are a lot of other customizations possible. That's what I repeat what Dr. Swarna was saying. The kind of visualization that you can do, none of the other applications will give you. Okay, that is one of the major advantage of R. All right. So I guess that was about understanding the data. And of course, one of the next thing that you will do on your data is to understand the descriptive statistics about your data, like mean, median, mode, skewness, kurtosis, etc. Right? So we want to understand the descriptive statistics. So we'll take one variable, which is job satisfaction, which is our objective variable, right? We did this survey to understand the job satisfaction. So let me understand what is the mean job satisfaction amongst all my employees. How do I do it? Very simple. Mean is an inbuilt function. Okay. Data is the file, $jobsat. Jobsat is the column name of that variable job satisfaction. So it tells me the average job satisfaction is 1.69. Okay, that's it. So median, same way. Median is a function. Which median you want to know, you can take it. Okay, so let me go back here and quickly calculate it for you. Mean of, let us say, I will take a mean family income. Okay, so pre-tax family income. If I type this, I get the answer here. Okay, let me show it one more time. So I get the answer here. Okay, so this is how easy it is to make mean median. But for mode, we don't have a function. So for mode, you need to define the function like this, get mode. So again, I'm not getting into explaining how it has been developed. One small tip I want to give you, just copy paste the same thing. You don't have to change anything. just copy paste this function in any R script where you want to calculate mode. Okay, it will work. In fact, this also I did not write it. I copy pasted from somewhere else. Okay, and it works with me. Okay, the name given is get mode. So get mode is a function in my R script which can be used to calculate mode. Okay, then I can calculate histogram. Of course, we saw histogram. Variance, the function is VAR. Standard deviation, the function is SD. Okay, so now you find the uniformity again. Functions you can always remember: mean, median, hist, var, SD. So the functions can be remembered, and this is the pattern in which you identify a variable. So let's say if you want the mean of age, what you do? Data $age, right? Okay. Just another, for income also I'm calculating mean, median, mode. So it has been done. So for most of your variables, you might want to calculate these descriptive statistics. Okay. Now, after having done this, instead of calculating individually, okay, individually, you can use a package called Psych. Okay, there is a reason why I'm introducing this here. R, again, Dr. Swarna was mentioning initially, R is known for a community which keeps developing different packages, which makes it easier and more robust in terms of their application. Okay, to do such calculations, business statistics calculation, there is a package which has been introduced by somebody, okay, which can be installed in the R script. By default, it will not be installed. You will have to install it. Okay, like in Excel, again, if you remember, data analysis not installed, right? You go and you install it later to do the analysis. Okay, same way. Now, how do you install? You can run a code like this: install.packages, give the name of the package, or even easier, just use the mouse, tools, install packages. Yeah, give it a second. Okay, so install packages. Here you can type, the package. The package that I want to install is Psych. Okay, if you see the package is there, click on that, and if I click install, it will take 30 seconds, and it will install the package in my R. Right now it is already installed, so I'm not pressing install. But if you are first time using R, I suggest you by default install Psych package. Okay, so once the Psych package is installed, because it is already installed, now what I will do is I will call it. That means I will activate the Psych package. Okay, for that there's a function called library. I'll just say library Psych. So the function is activated here. Okay, now using Psych package, what can we do? Okay, let me show you that. There is something called describe. It is a function which was not there earlier. Okay, now that I have installed Psych package, describe function will be available. Okay, now I will do this. Describe, okay, data job satisfaction. Okay, so it will give me this output. Hope you're following. Okay, so this is giving me okay, the same is presented in the presentation, so it is better visible. It is giving me the number of variables. So in this case, job satisfaction is one variable. Number of observations, which is 400, the sample size. Mean is 1.69. Okay, the average. Standard deviation, of course, median. Trimmed is basically it removes the bottom and the top 20% of the observations. Like for example, there are 400 observations, right? So the bottom 20% is around 20% is what? 8. Okay, 80 in the first and 80 at the end will be removed observations, and a mean is calculated for the remaining numbers. Okay, so this is generally done or used to remove the effect of outliers on the mean. So if there is a huge difference between this mean and this mean, it is a sign that there is one or two outliers which are dragging the mean value. Okay, it is skewed observation. So that is one observation. That's called trimmed mean. MAD is basically mean absolute deviation, the deviation from the mean, and adding them all. Minimum value, maximum value, range, skewness. Okay, skewness tells you, the mean is whether it is on the left side or the right side. So when you're judging the normal distribution, I mean how normally the data is distributed, you will use the skewness and kurtosis. Kurtosis tells you the steepness of the curve, right? And then of course standard error is another method which we will be using in hypothesis testing. So all this information is given as a set by describe. See, if you can observe, this is definitely better than the summary, okay, what we had. So that is why we use a Cyc package, okay. The other thing that the Cyc package does is this, okay. See, here I only called for one variable, right? I'll just say describe the whole data, okay. Describe the whole data. Now, if you see, again, the same as output is in the presentation. If you see this presentation, this output, these statistical parameters are calculated for each variable. I'm not just calculating for one. For each of them, it is calculated, and it has given me a complete set. All right. So that is what describe does. There is another beautiful, advantage of Cyc package, which is called describe by. Okay. What this does is, this is like, that there are males and females, right? Okay. I want to understand the job satisfaction levels of males separately and females separately. So I run this code. I'm saying describe by, that means divide by gender. Okay. So it is giving me, if you can see here, X1 is, these are the statistics for males. These are the statistics for females. So I can see that the mean satisfaction score amongst male are 1.67 and amongst females, it is 1.72. Okay, let me quickly run this in the code here. Okay. Okay. I will do describe by. So this is the function. I will calculate the job satisfaction score I want to know, but divided by, okay, that means group by, this time we will try to see the member union, okay, whether a person who is member of a union, okay, is more satisfied than the person who is not a member in the, so I will say group by data $mem union, okay. So if you see, it is giving me group 1 and group 2. Group 1 is where the observation is 1. That means he's a member. So members have a satisfaction score of 1.66. Non-members have a satisfaction score of 1.86. Okay. That means I'm able to get it, slice my data and describe it. So this also does not happen by default in R. When you install a Cyc package, that allows you to do it. Okay. One last thing, I'm not taking too much time. I'll just take 1 more minute. Just understand the problem, what it can do. In most of the times, you will collect your data in ordinal form. Okay. For example, one of the questions we had was on the job characteristic, right? Which job characteristic is most important for you? And we saw that the options we gave was high income, enjoy work, not getting fired, opportunity for advancement, right? So they had given us categorical data or ordinal data. It's not a numerical data. Now we need to convert these into codes. We need to convert these into numbers. So how do I do it? For that, you observe here, I'm giving the code like this. Ordinal data $code. Okay. Now see, $code is not a column name in the given Excel sheet. Okay. That means I'm creating a new column called code. Ordinal data $code. So that means I'm telling create a new column, name it code. That means I already have 29. Now there will be a 30th column that will get created. In the 30th column, what I want you to do is take this particular column, ordinal data $job characteristic. Take this particular column. Okay. Check if the value is high ink. This is an ordinal observation. Okay. Wherever it is there, that has to be replaced by 1. This is the code I'm giving. Okay. Okay. This coding looks, whatever I've written here looks very complicated, but actually it's very easy. You just write this, then you can just copy paste this for 4 more times and just change these simple, this part you can change and just change the codes and run it. And this is how your data look like. Okay. See what it was earlier looking. Now using this, you cannot calculate mean, median or anything. Okay. Now if you see, it has been converted into a number. On this, I can calculate, do any statistical performance. You followed, I guess. This is how you go on doing data, coding, data manipulation, and finally you have a data, and then you get into the stage of inferential statistics. All right. So this was my small briefing, and now I will again invite Dr. Swarna to take over from here. Okay, ma'am, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kiran.
I'll stop sharing.
Kiran sir, sorry for interruption. That red line, can you remove that with the
I will see, sir. I'll see.
yeah,
Uh,
with the eraser you can remove that, sir.
okay, sure. Yeah, it's
In the
fine.
top you'll find annotate.
She's sharing. Ma'am, you are sharing, right?
Yes, I'm sharing.
I stopped. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Are you able to see my screen? Everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to start, one second, just give me a second. So we are going to start with, just give me a second. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we will now start with inferential statistics. Now, why do we do inferential statistics? That's the fundamental question out there. I mean, we've collected some data and we have calculated mean, median, mode, and we have done all sorts of graphs, and we really understand the data well, and we can even come with some conclusions. Like, for example, when we did that scatter plot between age and income, it was very clearly visible that, you know, with higher age, the income is increasing, right? Similarly, when we looked at the job satisfaction levels between men and women, it was very clear that, you know, women were slightly less satisfied in terms of job satisfaction as compared to, sorry, they had more job satisfaction. Here you can see that with your eye, right? We can stop there, we can report the numbers and be done with it. But why don't we do that? I mean, why do we bother to do hypothesis testing and all that, right? So analysis or data analysis that we do, most often the idea is to generalize the results, right? I want to apply based on what I am seeing in the small sample of mine. I want to draw conclusions for the larger population. But there is a lot of risks involved. I just want to give you a small hypothetical situation. Let's assume that you have been given a project by Government of India to estimate the literacy rate of India, current literacy rate, okay? So what did you do? You randomly sampled 20,000 people across the country, and you found out, you calculated the literacy rate, it was 78%, okay? Now India's population is 136 crores. Now this sample of 20,000, although it looks like a big sample, it's like 0.001% of India's population. So based on 0.001% of India's population, can you say that the literacy rate for the whole of the country is 78%? So I hope you see where I'm going with this. Tiny sample, yes, I've got some good results, but can I take this tiny sample results and say that, hey, the whole country has, you know, 78% of population? There is a lot of risk involved in making such a decision, right? In order to make such decision making as scientific as possible, we have this entire branch of statistics, which is inferential statistics, where, you know, based on certain theories, statistical theories and probability theory, we kind of do this hypothesis testing, and we say, yes, we can generalize, we can understand that the sample data is truly reflecting the population data, or we say, no, the sample is not reflecting the population data, right? So those are the kind of hypothetical hypothesis testings that we do. So now we will start with our first one. Yeah. So first we'll start with the one sample t-test. One sample t-test is very similar to the analogy that I just gave you. What am I doing? I got a sample. So for example, in this employee data set, let's say we found the average age, the mean age, right? I've got a number. Now, can I say that the population, if I take the whole population of, say, employees, you know, working age people, will their population average, will it be also 39? You know, that's the kind of question that we are trying to ask here. So the null hypothesis is, the mu here means population mean, and X is basically sample mean. So the null hypothesis is, yes, this sample mean is actually equal to the population mean. I mean, I can consider such a situation. The alternative hypothesis is, no, the population mean is not equal to the sample mean. Now, please pay attention to the fact that I am using sample, once again, So I am using the not equal to here, which means my sample mean is either lesser than my population mean, covering both the possibilities here, and hence this is called as a two-tailed test. Okay. Now, how will I do this in R? Okay, let's go back to RStudio. Incidentally, if Kiran talked about get WD, set WD, and read.csv to read files, right? Now, one easy shortcut to import your files, if you don't want to do read.csv, is you go here, you say import data set, you go here, you open your employee data like this. As you can see, this is how the input and all that looks like, and you say import and you get your employee data here. As you can see, RStudio also allows you to view your data here, so you can kind of, if you want to kind of, now here is your age column. We have 37, 24, 56. Okay, they all look like, correct numbers. I mean, we are not having a number like 2005 here, which definitely would be wrong because, nobody can be 2005, right, in terms of age. So it helps to eyeball the data. So now coming back to the R script, what do we want to first find out? We want to find out the average mean age, right? And this is a good thing about RStudio. It will prompt you. You just start keying the first few letters, it will automatically prompt you. So you can just click on it, okay? So what is my data set? My data set name is EMP data. So I'm going to say EMP data. Again, I'm getting a nice prompt here, $age. Now, I would expect to see the average age, which is, as you can see here in the bottom, you can see here it's 39.41, which is my sample mean for age. Okay. Now going back to my PPT, so my hypothesis will look something like this, specifically to this data set, that my population mean for age is also 39.41. It is not equal to 39.41. This is my null and alternative hypothesis, right? And how did I get this 39.41? I got it from the data set. I calculated the sample mean. Now I want to try to understand if this sample mean truly reflects the population mean as well. So this is your fundamental code here. Now in this case, I've already calculated the mean. So I'm going to simply say t.test. I'm going to just copy paste. I copy paste a lot because that way, I don't make spelling mistakes, or, I don't, instead of capital A, I don't say small a and then get unnecessary error. Wherever it's possible, I copy paste. Okay. It's I think good. And India as a culture, we are good at it. So we should be, we should stick to our strengths. So now I'm going to say mu is equal to, which is nothing but my mean. And I'm going to directly feed in this number 39.41, 39.41. So what I am telling R is, hey, take the age column from the data set. What is it? Which is the data set? Employee data set. So R knows that it has to look for age in employee data set, and it has to compare and the mean value for the t-test is 39.41. So I did that and I just press here, and here we go. I have the results here. We'll switch back to the presentation so that we can see a nice blown up view. Now, when you look at this result, it tells you quite a few things. It says that DF is equal to 399, which is the degrees of freedom, and the p-value is equal to 1. This is 95% confidence interval and all that. Now, the bottom line here is that p-value, as you can see, we have highlighted it in bold. If my p-value is lesser than 0.05, then I will always reject the null hypothesis. If it is greater than 0.05, then I fail to reject the null hypothesis, right? In this case, as you can see, the p-value is greater than 0.05. It's actually 1, which is a fairly, it's not a very common result, but sometimes when you use discrete data, you may get a p-value which is equal to 1. Whatever it is greater than 0.05. So I am going to reject my null hypothesis. That's it. And we are done. This is a simple one sample t-test. Now, can we repeat the same exercise for another column? Why don't we? Now, one of the things that I would like to mention here is before you start doing your t-test, always ensure that your data is either integer or numerical data. If you do this on a text data, right? Like for example, if you look this data set here, this is the raw data set. All the values here are in text. For example, occupation. Kiran, when he showed you, Professor Kiran showed the converted data set where he had already coded and made this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and all that. I'm showing the raw data set. Now, if you had taken the raw data set and done the t-test on set, it will throw you an error because very clearly this is not numerical or integer data, right? So you will always have to be very clear. So one thing that I will again emphasize on is that you start with discussed, but it's really good to have this. So if you see here, now I want to do the t-test again for another numerical value. So this clearly tells me which one is integer, which one is number, and so on. So let us say I want to look at income. So yeah, pre-tax income, family income, right? We can try family income also. So it is here and very clearly it's a numerical variable. So I'm going to be happy with it. Now, one more reason why it helps to have STR results at your disposal is it's easy to copy paste, right? Like I said, don't waste typing your waste time on typing. Here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy paste the same code because we know it works, and then instead of age, I am going to copy pre-tax.faminc. As you can see, it's capital P, capital F, and all that. And I see that very often when we type, we will forget to put the capital, and it's an extremely common error. Half the time, your errors will be because you have not specified the correct variable name. Right? So I've just copy pasted everything. And the only other thing that I want to do is I have to give the mu value. Now, earlier I calculated the means separately, right? But instead, I'm going to simply say mu is equal to mean of employee.age, and I'm going to simply make this pre-tax family income. Okay, so what I have done is earlier I did this in 2 steps. I first calculated the mean and then found out that it's 39.41, and then I directly fed it here. But now what I'm going to do, I'm going to say mean of employee. I'm going to put this here and I'm going to say, hey, whatever result you get, please store it in mu. And when R reads it, it will first calculate this, store it in mu, and then it will calculate the whole t-test thing again. So let me do Control Enter, and here you go. You have the results here at the bottom, as you can see. Let's switch back to the presentation. This is the result, and our hypothesis in this case was the population income was 50. And the population income was not equal to 50. The 50 is something we have just assumed. We want to see 50 here really means $50,000 or 50,000 rupees. So we just wanted to see that this was the number that we had taken. So here we see, look at the p-value. What are we getting here? It's 2.2, and it is E minus 16. Okay. Now, how do I interpret E minus 16? Okay. E minus 16 is nothing but 0.0000. So you go on like that for 16 zeros, you go after decimal point and then say 22. So whenever you see E minus 16, you know immediately that this is the number is a point. It comes after the point, right? It's this thing. It's not a whole number. So this is a very, very tiny number. So like I said, when I calculate, when I compare it to the 0.05 level threshold, it's definitely lesser. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And hence I will reject the null hypothesis. Okay. So this is again, just the same example. Now, this is another variation in the same one sample t-test that we saw. And in this case, we are using what is called as the one-tail test. Why is one-tail different? Because here, earlier, as you see, here it was not equal to, which means my sample mean may be my sample mean may be greater or lesser than the true population mean. But in this case, I have some prior knowledge which tells me that my sample mean, my true population mean is likely to be greater than my hypothesized population mean. Okay, I have some prior knowledge. Because of that, I'm just taking a greater than symbol, and that is called as a one-tail test. Again, this thing is pretty much the same. The only extra thing that I have to do, I'm going to use the same line of code. By default, R does a two-tail test for you. So when you want it to do something one-tail, you have to indicate, let R know that you want a one-tail test by, and which we do by saying alternative is equal to greater. That's it, simple. So just like that, by adding these two words, we have made the two-tail test into a one-tail test. So I'm going to press Control Enter here, and again I get a result, which is the same thing here. Again, the p-value is, this is what I'm getting as p-value, and I reject the null hypothesis, right? So this is what it is, and this kind of summarizes all the two versions of one sample t-test. Okay. Now, one of the things that I just wanted to bring to your notice is sometimes we develop these myths, right, where we blindly believe that, hey, if I reject a null hypothesis, that is very good. Okay, that is what is the best thing that one can hope for. Yay, my null hypothesis got rejected, so I'm all good. My research is fantastic. My results are brilliant. Okay, but that is really not the case. There is no good or bad in anything. What in a given situation, what you want to have, do you want the null hypothesis to be rejected or to be accepted? I mean, what you consider as a good result really depends on the context. Okay, so let's go into the next example, and there I'll talk about a little bit more about the same. Okay, so the next what we have is what is called as the independent two-sample t-test. Now, until now, what we were doing was we took one sample and we calculated a sample mean or a sample statistic, and we were simply seeing that can I use this sample statistic to describe the larger population, or does this sample statistic, is it adequate to reflect the larger population? Can I generalize my results, right? That is what we were looking at. Now we have moved on to what is called as independent two-sample t-test. So here, what I am wanting to do is, I have taken two samples and I am comparing some metric or some parameter between these two samples, and it looks different when I just do my analysis. Like for example, in earlier Kiran's slide, we saw that the job satisfaction. Let me see if I can quickly move them. In fact. So it's basically in Kiran's thing. Is it this? Yeah, it's this. So you can see here, the sample mean for men was 1.67, and the sample mean for job satisfaction, this is job satisfaction level, it is 1.72. So, okay, so I found this in my sample. Okay, it looks, in my sample, it looks like women seem to have slightly higher job satisfaction levels as compared to men. Okay, but is this different? I mean, what I would like to understand is there in the population also? This is a sample. That is, we are observing a difference in the sample. But can I take this result, this difference that I'm seeing, and say that even for a larger population, that the job satisfaction levels are significantly different from each other, right? That is a question that we are asking. So coming back to my current slide. So this is where we are. So this is my null hypothesis. What is it? There is no difference between the job satisfaction levels of men and women. In other words, the population job satisfaction mean is equal to the population job satisfaction levels for males. Okay. And what is the alternative hypothesis? That there exists a difference. There is a difference, which is a finite difference, nice positive difference, where, you know, when will it be a positive difference? When the female's job satisfaction level is more than the male's job satisfaction level, and which is what we are seeing in our sample. So I kind of want to test for that, right? Is the female job satisfaction level really more than the male job satisfaction level? And is that something I can generalize based on my sample to apply for the larger population as well? So what do we do? Simple, the same T dot test, but in this case, we will be specifying both the columns, okay? Male job satisfaction column and female job satisfaction column. Now let's go back to the RStudio. Okay, now I want you to show here, let's open the original data set. If you look at job satisfaction level, I don't know where it is. Okay, anyway, it's in one of these, yeah, it's here. So job satisfaction is here, okay? It varies from 1 to 4. And I have my gender variable, which is here, which is 2 and 1, okay? So I basically have the whole gender variable captured in a single column. But in order to do this test, I need my data arranged like this, where I have only the female job satisfaction as one column, and I have the male job satisfaction as a separate column, okay? So what we have done is we have split this data. So if you look at employee data 2, we have rearranged the data. How did we rearrange? We simply filtered all the women-related job satisfaction, say from here to, I think, nearly 50% of the data somewhere down. We selected it and we created a separate column. Similarly, we picked up all the male job satisfaction and put it in a separate column. This is something you will do in Excel using a filter or a if condition and so on, okay? Now, in R, so we have already done this for you. But if you remember, Professor Kiran was talking about slicing and dicing and all that, right? Those things become very important whenever you want to rearrange your data. And in R, depending on the kind of test, and this is not just in R, even in Excel, any data analysis software, right? Different functions will require you to organize your data differently. And that is why, you know, the slicing and dicing and the data manipulation, reordering the data set, sorting, ascending, all these things become very, very important. In fact, they will take up 60 to 70% of your time in any data analysis exercise, okay? So I know we all think that data analysis is the core of any empirical measurement kind of a job, but the fact is that data cleaning, pre-processing, and fixing the errors in the data set actually takes up more time, valuable time. And if you have those fundamentals right, analysis just falls into place automatically. So we will be running this test on employee data 2. Here is how we will go about it. We will say t.test, and then we will say emp data 2. As you know, in this case, $. What is our dependent variable? We are, what are the two variables that we are looking at now? Female job satisfaction, comma, emp data $, male job satisfaction, comma, var is equal to true. So the var is equal to true is just to tell R that, there are some fundamental assumptions underlying assumptions related to variance. So you actually say var dot equal to true. So where we are assuming equal variances in this case. So I just say control enter. I have some, sorry, here as you can see I put comma instead of dot. Yeah, so I have my results here. Let's go back to our PPT. Now this is the big blown up result. As always, we are only interested in the p-value, and you can see here that the p-value is 0.056. It's very close to 0.05, yes, but it is more than 0.05, okay? And we don't really care. The rule is absolute. If it is even 0.00001, more than 0.05, we will still go ahead and say that we fail to reject the null hypothesis, okay? In other words, we accept the null hypothesis, but in statistical jargon, the scientific way to say is fail to reject the null hypothesis. What does that mean in this case? It means that there is no significant difference between male job satisfaction of men and job satisfaction of women. Although in my sample, I do see a small difference, you know, based on my sample alone, if I had come to a conclusion, I would have actually said that women have higher levels of job satisfaction as compared to men. But given the fact that I've taken a very small sample size, when I look at the larger picture, the difference that we are observing is conclude that there is no difference between job satisfaction levels of men and women. Now, earlier I talked about the myth of, you know, now in this case, for example, we have failed to reject null hypothesis. Okay. Now, some people might feel that that is bad. Oh, we should always be, you know, rejecting the null hypothesis. But that's not the case. It depends on the context, right? For example, let us say that, you know, the women of the, there is some lady in the firm who felt that, you know, women are being unnecessarily, you know, made to work harder. The pay is not equal, and women have much lower, women actually have lower job satisfaction levels or something like that. Okay. But then if let us say that the company was able to get the data and prove that the null hypothesis is the accepted hypothesis, and the company is able to say that, hey, you are making all these claims, but there is really no evidence that, you know, there is significant difference in job satisfaction levels. So in this case, since we are looking at it from a firm's context, actually accepting the null hypothesis is favorable. But on the other hand, this for some reason true that the policies are not women centric and women do have lesser job satisfaction, right? Then the whoever is suing the company or whoever has complained would like to have the alternative hypothesis proven to be proved, where she's able to say something like, in this case, of course, job satisfaction level is higher, but maybe if she can say that the job satisfaction level of women is lesser than male, and if she can prove it, then that is favorable to her. Maybe she's going to sue the company, and, you know, and she needs evidence that will support her claim, right? So what is good is actually immaterial. Okay, it depends on the context, and we should not have these blind this thing that, you know, rejecting the null hypothesis is always the expected result should be. Accepting the null hypothesis is also an insight, and it can be a very valuable insight. We typically, when we publish our project results or we're trying to write a research paper, I have seen a lot of people manipulate the numbers so that they reject the null hypothesis. That is not correct. If you are accepting the null hypothesis, that is what the science is telling you to do. So go ahead and try to instead see what is the reason, why are we you know, getting to accept the null hypothesis, and that makes for an interesting research paper as well. So this is something I just wanted to put it out there. I have personally always felt very strongly about it. With that, we move on to the next level, which is now we are starting to look at relationships. Okay, so whenever I want to compare two relationships, the relationship between any two variables, the first step to do so would always be correlation. It's a very simple test. As you can see, whatever we have in blue, it's simply the function name is core.test. You simply give the two variables that you want to relate to. So going back to the RStudio, the script, I say core. As always, R is prompting me, and I say emp data $age, sorry, comma emp data dollar. I think I'll go for pre-tax family income, and then I'm going to just press Control Enter here. I have the results here. Actually, what I have in the presentation is not pre-tax, it's pre-tax income, sorry. So I'm going to just go for that. There are two income related variables. One is family income and one is personal income. Okay, so I have my results here. So what we see at the bottom most is the actual correlation coefficient. Okay. But as you can see here, we also get the p-value and the confidence interval and all the other related parameters. So as always, okay, now when we look at the correlation coefficient here, it's a very small number. It's just like 0.22. Which tells me that probably age is not that highly correlated with income, right? Now, why is it so small? If you think about it, do you always think that because one is older, they get more salary? The job category also matters, right? For example, somebody can be 55 years old, but they could be a security guard in that particular company. On the other hand, somebody could be 22-year-old fresh out of IIT, right? So age is not always, yes, to an extent it does help, but it's not the only thing that determines income. There are educational levels, there is work experience. So there are so many other things which actually could also be, associated with income. That is probably the reason why I am getting such a small correlation. Okay, so what did I do here? I saw the correlation here. I'm getting a row correlation coefficient that is not going to be, people are not going to be happy to look at it. Let me jack the numbers and make it 0.85, okay, 85. So let's not fuddle with the numbers. Let's always stick to the ethics of data analysis, and let's instead try to explain why I am seeing what I am seeing more rationally. Now again, as always, we come back to the p-value. What do we see here? We see 4.032E, the small hyphen, 0.06. So we know the moment we see this hyphen and a big number, we know that this is a very small number here. It's 0.00006 zeros, and then it is 4032, which is definitely lesser than your P 0.05 threshold, and hence we reject the null hypothesis. Incidentally, what was our null and alternative? Sorry, I missed on this. This is correlation that we are looking at, right? So R is the correlation coefficient. The null hypothesis is correlation coefficient is 0, which means there is no relationship between the two variables. And the alternative is that correlation is not equal to 0. Again, it's not equal to, which means it could be either a negatively relation, there could either be a negative relationship. In that case, we will find R equal to a negative number. For example, if I had a number like minus 0.5, right, that indicates a negative relationship, or it could be a positive number, okay? With this, we move on to, okay, so this is just, I mean, I'm not, this is beyond the scope of this particular session. I'm not going to teach you how to do it, but this is just to show you the kind of brilliant visualizations that we can do in R, and actually we can do these things in Python as well, right? And these are not things that you can ever do in Excel. What is this? This is called as a heat map. This is a correlation matrix where, for example, variable 10, it's 100% related to variable 10, same variable. Variable 10 is the correlation coefficient is 0.53 to variable 10 and variable 7, the coefficient is 0.53. Variable 10 and variable 6, it is 0.61, and so on. And what does this blue and the red mean? Blue instantly tells me that these 4 variables are positively correlated with variable 10, and the oranges kind of tell me that they are negatively correlated. In fact, I can further customize this heat map to also tell me or only highlight those correlation coefficients which are statistically significant. Okay, so all that can be just put into one simple. I mean, this is based on a visualization package. Package for R. This is just to show you that, you know, while whatever we are seeing is quite dull and dreary, actually a lot of fancy things and interesting visualizations that you can do with R, not to mention a lot of other sophisticated analysis. But this is the first step. So first nail this, and then we can look at somewhat higher order things, right? Next is chi-square. So when do we do chi-square, right? So far we have done t-test, and then we looked at correlation. Now, what was a common theme in all these things? It was that we were only looking at numerical variables, okay? But when we are trying to do chi-square, sorry, was there a question? Okay.
No, ma'am.
I'm assuming.
You have,
Yeah.
you have last 10 minutes.
Okay, all right. So when do we do chi-square? We do chi-square whenever we have ordinal data. For example, union membership, it was 1 and 0 or 1 or 2 or something like that. And occupation, we had categories 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each category each number represents a category, professional, technology, sales, and things like that, right? So whenever I have ordinal data, I will be using chi-square test on them. I think, okay, now, so I'm not going to go back to the R Studio. I think you all understand it pretty well. So simple, the function here is chi-square.test, and I'm putting data $member union and data $occup.end. These are the two variables of which I have, which are of interest to me. And the null hypothesis is there is no association between union membership and occupation. And the alternative is there is an association between membership and occupation categories. So here we have the results, and let's look at the p-value. As always, it's 0.006, which is lesser than 0.05, definitely. So we are going to reject the null hypothesis, which means there is a relationship between union membership and the job category, which makes sense, right? So typically, if you see people in managerial job categories, they may not prefer to become union members. On the other hand, the laborers and the shop workers in the shop floor, they are more unionized, right? So there is definitely an association between, depending on what level of, what kind of job you have, that determines your union membership. So there is an association there. With that, we move on to ANOVA. So when do we use ANOVA? So ANOVA is something which we use when we have our dependent variable is a numerical variable, which means my area of interest is definitely numerical variable for, say, something like age or income. But I want to look if there exists a significant difference in income between, the keyword being between, different categories of workers. Okay, so I have, if we go back to the R Studio, I just wanted to, I wanted you to take a look at the raw data here again. As you can see here, occupational, I have so many categories, right? So laborer, textiles, admin, production, and so on. So what I want to see is if there exists a significant difference in the mean income between these categories. So if I calculate the mean income for the laborer, is it significantly different from the sales guy? Again, is it significantly different from admin jobs, and so on and so forth? Okay. So what is my null hypothesis? That my null hypothesis is that the means are all the same across all the categories. Okay, it can be any number of categories, and that is why I've used mu k. K can be 10, k can be 15. Okay. Alternative hypothesis is that they are not equal. So here I put not equal everywhere, but even if one of them is not equal, right? Even then, so for example, even this, I mean, even if one category is not equal, then also we are kind of falling into the null alternative hypothesis category, even if one of them is not equal. That's the alternative hypothesis. And in this case, we have to do 2 lines of code. The basic function here is AOV. I'm going to just copy paste this and quickly run it in the R Studio. Yeah. So if you see here, okay, so this is what, let's say I'm going to run this first. What do I have here? I have this function, which is the ANOVA function, AOV. I am putting my dependent variable or my numerical variable first, which is in this case income. I am using this tilde, okay, which indicates relationship. I want to check the pre-tax between these occupational categories. Okay, that's what it means. And I am using the AO and I'm storing the results on a model. Okay. Now when I run it, oh sorry, my file name is wrong. It's basically emp data and emp data. Okay, so I have run it here, but as you can see, there are no results yet. That is because this A model that we are creating, this ANOVA function operates slightly differently. Okay, it doesn't directly print out the results. It simply takes it in and stores it into an object. This is called as an object, R object. Now I have to give another explicit function to print out. So what I'm going to say, hey, summarize whatever is there in the A model. So when I run that, I get the results. So this is what is my summary looking like. Going back to the presentation. Okay. So here is what I have. As you can see, this is the p-value. In this case, what we are doing is we are looking at the p-value of the F statistic, which is the test statistic for ANOVA. So it's 1.16, whatever, E minus 0.6, okay, which means it's a really small value. And of course, we can always go, if you're confused, you can always look at these stars. Here there are 3 stars, which means it is highly significant and nearly 0, okay? Yeah. Okay, so the p-value is lesser than 0.05, and we reject the null hypothesis here, okay, which means that the mean income across the different job categories are not really equal. They are significantly they are unequal, you know, among the groups. We don't know which one is greater, which one is lesser, and all that, but at least we know that they're definitely not equal. Okay, now moving on, we go to simple regression. Now we have already done correlation, so regression is simply another way of exploring relationship between 2 variables. And one of the things that I'd like to say at this point is, if you just want to know if there exists a relationship between 2 variables, you can stop with correlation. Okay, that itself tells you more than enough. You will do regression only when you kind of want to understand what is the magnitude of impact that each of the variable has, and if you want to also do some prediction for in future, right? So only when these 2 things are involved, regression actually makes sense. Otherwise, you can stop with correlation, and that's a perfectly acceptable result. So what is the null hypothesis here? This is beta is the regression coefficient. We say that the regression coefficient is equal to 0, which means there exists, has the age variable does not have any influence on job satisfaction levels. And then the alternative is that it is not equal to 0. Again, what does that mean? It's not equal to. So beta can be negative or positive. If it is negative, it means it has a negative influence on job satisfaction, which means as age increases, people's job satisfaction levels are decreasing. Okay. On the other hand, if the beta is a nice positive number, then it means that as age increases, job satisfaction also increases, which means basically they move in the same direction. Okay. So this is the result that I get here. Let's quickly run this. Sorry.
Ma'am.
Yeah. Are we there yet?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll just wrap up. I'll wrap up with this. I'm going to just quickly run this in the studio. So yeah. So this is what it is. I'm going to just run them together. Yeah. Okay. Can you see these are the common errors that you will have? You will use the wrong file name or the wrong variable name and so on. So yeah, this is what it is. And I'm not sure why I'm not getting the results. Yeah. Okay. So the results are here. Again, going back to the presentation, this is how the results look like. Where are my R coefficients? This is the row. This is my intercept, and this is my estimate of the coefficient. Okay. Now, as you can see, the coefficient is quite small. It's quite tiny. The magnitude is very less. So, but although it is negative, which means that as age increases, job satisfaction level does decrease, but very, very, very moderately, very teeny weeny bit of an influence. Okay, because the magnitude, the strength of the relationship is pretty less. And next, what I want to look at is my p-value associated with the coefficient, right? What is it? It's 0.171. What does it mean? It means it is greater than 0.05. And whenever we have a p-value which is greater than 0.05, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. So basically, in this case, we don't have enough evidence. Whatever I'm seeing here, that is not enough evidence to say that there exists an influence between, I mean, age influences job satisfaction levels. When I kind of generalize it for the larger population, yes, it seems like there is something going on in my sample, but maybe that is just fluke, it's just chance. You know, there is no truth to it. There is no or stable, robust truth to it, right? That is how I will conclude. So it's 7:30. Again, multiple regression. I'm not going to run it here, but it's simple. We already have data $H. You just say plus and add whatever another variable you want to add. You want to add one more variable, again say plus and add one more variable. So you can just go on adding how many ever variables you want, but by just saying plus that variable and so on, right? So then you have to print out the summary, and the results are exactly the same. I mean, similar format of results. Now, as you can see here, let's just look at the p-value for age. Of course, it's still not significant. I mean, we reject the null hypothesis, but let's look at the impact of pre-tax income. Again, it's 0.06, which is slightly, more than 0.05. So I fail to reject the null hypothesis. Or in other words, I have to accept the null hypothesis where I say, okay, actually the null hypothesis here is wrong. It will be a joint hypothesis where I say beta age equal to beta pre-tax income. Both of them are jointly together, they are 0 and they are not equal to 0. So this will be actually beta age. Just give me 5 minutes. I'll just wrap up. So basically this will be income, right? Together they are 0. So that's how it will look like. So we'll make the correction in the slide when we send it to all this thing. So yeah. So basically we will have, in fact, what happens is in a multiple linear regression, you will have individual hypothesis testing for every hypothesis test for every regression coefficient, which is the p-value which is reported here. Apart from that, there will also be an F statistic reported. So it's here. As you can see, the F statistic is here, which is for the joint hypothesis where the regression model as a whole has an impact or it doesn't have an impact. So you will kind of have multiple hypotheses when it comes to a regression analysis. We'll make those changes in the slide. So if you look at here, the F statistic also has a p-value of 0.06665. So from that context also, we have to reject the null hypothesis, which means not only are the individual regression coefficients not significant, but even the regression model as a whole together, when I take all the variables together also, they don't seem to have a significant result. Okay, so the p-value here is 0.0. Don't bother to type, cut, copy, paste, it's fine. Just simply run it. First, take the data sets that we are giving you, run it. Then you take another data set somewhere from the net. There are a lot of places, you just go and do CSV data set, something or other will show up. Take a data set and take a new data set, run tables and things like that next week. But before that, please do your homework and get these things nailed so that you also get a lot more out of it. Okay, thank you so much. Now Kiran, I think it's
let's take a
minute, take it from here.
Not more than that. I'll take a minute. So are there any questions if any one of you want to ask? Quickly we can take it, if maybe a minute or so. Any of you have any questions? You can always write to us, you can email us, okay? And I request all of you to please connect to both of us, both Swarna and myself are available on LinkedIn. So connect to us for continued learning. And yeah, just one or two information I want to pass on. Okay, is there a question here? Good to see. Okay, thank you. So I will share these slides and our script also with you. So unless you practice it, I can tell you this whole 1.5 hour that we all spent will go waste. It will never happen. Learning will never happen unless you put the code and run it. Okay, so start practicing it. The material will be shared by me. All right, to your emails. I just will send you a feedback form. You fill that and send it back. Immediately, I will send the materials. And we are also planning to come out with 2 more programs. One is maybe next week I will come out with introduction to R, which is just a pure R programming, very basic one that I will be conducting for 1 hour. Then next to that, we will also have Swarna ma'am conducting a program on data analysis using Python. Okay, we also want to start webinar series on Python. So we request you to please join there also. Please let your friends and classmates, colleagues to join too, right? So thank you all. Thanks for your time. Thank you, Swarna ma'am, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Kiran. Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye-bye. So I'll end the meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah, thank you.
Please write feedback. Give us good feedback for our improvement. So,
Yeah, sure.
and if any of your organizations have any requirements, so please do let us know. Certificates we are not providing, sir. It's not a certificate program. It's just a webinar.
How about Python, sir?
Python, yeah, sometime we yeah.
Like MBA point of view, means we are studying only application point of view.
Correct.
So is it challenging to learn the codings and then we had to go with that, or we can also learn?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So let me take that. So see, Python, in fact, I would even go ahead and say Python is more intuitive. If I take programming as such, actually Python is the easiest to program. But the advantage of R is you don't have to do that much program because a lot of packages are available. So you just have to write these 2 lines of code. So Python programming is pretty easy. And in fact, the first series that I will start, I'm not going to delve too much into programming at all. I'm just going to use pandas to show, how you can manipulate the data and do, exploratory data analysis, plotting, graphs, and those things. So yeah, I mean, Python is also not very hard to pick up. See, I am basically not from an engineering, both me and Kiran, as you may know, we both are not from an engineering background, and both of us have learned, picked up Python in the last couple of years, the last 2 to 3 years. And I think we have been pretty, we've not found it particularly difficult. Yeah.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
bye,
Bye.
sir. Thanks for joining.
Bye, sir. Bye, sir. Bye.
Thank you very much, sir.